Hello, everyone. This episode does have a trigger warning. We talk about ableism, we talk about sexual violence against women, and just a variety of triggering themes around ableism and neurodivergence and death threats. Please heed this warning as you go into this episode, and please take care of yourselves.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Podcast by Army podcast, where we talk about BTS, Army, fandom, and research. We are your co-hosts, Dr. Kate Ringland
Jhertau Her, a university researcher.
and today we're talking about ableism.
And also Palestine, because that's just this whole
Well,
season. It's
yes,
just ableism and Palestine. It's all connected. It's
yes.
almost like a genocide is a mass disabling event that
You make an
harms people.
extremely good point, yes.
Yeah. That is, and also it's almost as if there's disabled Palestinian people who don't have the resources to support themselves in a literal like genocide. That is, I don't know about you, Kate. I really don't know. But that's how it is. Anyway, take it away, Kate.
Yeah.
This episode is all you. I'm here to support you. And also, yeah, I'm also exploring being a neurodivergent team. We're not really that ready to delve into it, but we'll think about that.
It's okay, you have time. I've spent the last 20 years coming to terms with my neurodivergence.
I am 20. I got time.
Yes. Because I think I was 19 or 20 when I got my first diagnosis. So there you go.
I looked at my STEM toys and everything, and then I looked at how I act and how like neurotypical my roommates are, and I was like, huh, I think there's something going on here.
Okay, I do have to say that you are a much more highly functioning 20-year-old, potentially neurodivergent person than I was. So good on you. Good on you.
Well, that's because I have Asian parents who demand a lot of success from their firstborn daughter.
Oh.
And functionality.
Oh.
So it's almost like culture shapes how we are as people. That's a wild concept.
Anyhow, so yes, so today we're talking about ableism. I don't know, where should we start? I feel like we have a lot of things on our agenda that we thought we should talk about. I don't know if we should maybe start with what ableism is.
Yeah, we could start there. I think that would be a good way to like set the stage for listeners.
Yeah.
Professor Ringland, who studies assistive tech and disability, what is ableism?
Answer. The accessible answer, if you will. Ableism is basically when you are discriminatory against disabled people. Often it's very underhanded or passive in terms of the way our language shape how we're thinking about disability, and it just comes up in conversation. So saying things like that's crazy or that's lame, those are actually ableist terms that are just rife everywhere. Oh, an army favorite or a fandom favorite, probably an internet I don't know. Anyway, I only know Army, so I'm sorry if Army feels called out by this, but he was so insane for that. Very ableist.
Also in use of the R word. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
The
Like, I thought
increasing
we got rid
use
of that in the 90s.
Yeah, the increasing use of the R word on Army Twitter is, I don't know if it's like a miscommunication thing between like native speakers and non-native speakers, or if it's just an increased use of it on the internet in general, but it's just so strange for people to use it because even people my age, I'm younger obviously, but even people my age, we don't use that word at all.
No, because it was very common. It was extremely common slur when I was growing up, like even into high school. So like late 90s, early 2000s. And then there was a really big push to just eliminate it. And we all, I don't know, collectively agreed not to use it anymore. It was wild considering we didn't have social media back then. Anyway, but yeah, it just became maybe there was a media push or something. I don't remember. Anyways, we all collectively decided not to use it anymore. And it basically got squashed out of common speech. So yeah, by the time you were born, I'm sure it was just not a thing that people said. Other things like autistic became the slur instead, which isn't great, but and I still see that one quite often too. But hello to Autism Awareness Month, by the way. Anyway, my ADHD is going to show in this episode. Here we go.
That's so
Yes.
real though.
We're just gonna put it out there. So yeah, there's been some an interesting time, especially very recently. That word has had a comeback, and I don't know. I also just feel, especially in the last 6 months or whatever, during these tense times that we are living through, especially on Army Twitter, I feel like there's just been an uptick of ableism in general. Even it wasn't great before, but I feel like there's just been a lot more, or maybe that's just been directed at me more.
No, I think people have gotten way bolder with their bigotry.
Yeah. And I will say, maybe before we like really dive into this episode, that literally everything is intersectional. So we're going to be running a gamut of topics today, but disability is one of those things that cross-cuts every other lived identity. Literally every other lived identity can experience disability. And so what you'll often see is it intersecting with gender and sexual identity and with race and ethnicity, and it just cross cuts. And so you'll often see ableist slurs getting thrown in with racism and everything else.
Even just earlier in this episode, we were talking about like with my Asian identity, like being
Yeah.
Hmong, right? A Hmong, by the way, is a minority ethnic group from Southeastern Asia. And my family has never talked about mental health ever, like ever. And it's only recently I started talking about it because I needed therapy, right? I needed support and help. So I was able to like start that conversation. But even now, it's like hard to even acknowledge any type of mental health stuff or anything when it comes to neurodivergence or disability.
So, yeah, so that's big caveat there is yes, this episode is about ableism, but we have other stuff going on too. Okay.
Do you want to maybe get into your
Should we get into
first
it?
major cancellation related to disability and ableism, Kate?
Yeah, so this will be a fun story. I'll try not to cry. No, I'll be real. Things have been so much worse since then. At the time, it was extremely traumatic, but in retrospect, I'm like, that was just the first of many of these unpleasant episodes in my life. But yeah, it was during the release of and I was still running. Oh, maybe I should also say, at the time, I was running an account that was basically, it was the disability advocacy. I forget the whole title. That's how I blocked a lot of things out of my memory. Anyways, it was a disability advocacy account. And the account at the time I was using I've talked about it a bit here because I was using it for the ticket resale stuff. So I basically was using it as an educational platform to educate people about ableism. And it was really lovely because a bunch of disabled folks came into my circle through it. And so I got to meet a lot of other disabled army. And we were trying to create, or at least I was trying to create an educational safe space. And so it was a bunch of disabled folks, but then also people who just wanted to know more and maybe learn about being allies and stuff. And I ran that account I had been running it for probably about a year before that came out. And like I said, I had used it to help get a bunch of ticket trades for the PTD LA concerts because they had screwed up the ADA accessible seating. And so I had used that account to facilitate a bunch of ticket trades for accessible seating. And yeah, and I also did a lot of educational stuff. So I had threads on like how to make alt text and all that good stuff. Anyway, fast forward to that coming out, and I wasn't even on the disabled account at the time. I was just on just like my regular Stan account because that had just come out and I was excited about the song release. And I had had things on my radar because one of the lyrics in the song is about how COVID is over. And most people can accept that when people say that, they're saying it at the time, it was more like, oh, more of a wishful thinking sort of thing. And isn't it nice that we're not like in lockdown? And so most people just take that as a whatever. But for disabled folks, saying COVID is over, even now, could be triggering because it's not over. And for a lot of disabled folks, it is particularly triggering because COVID, what is now historically a point in time when a lot of disabled people especially folks with, say, severe chronic illness and other things, more or multiply disabled folks, they all got thrown under the bus by society during COVID. And I will say, maybe we should put a trigger warning at the front of this episode. Anyway, so during COVID, then I actually knew quite a number of people that died because they either got COVID while they had other complicated health things going on, or they didn't have access to healthcare because the system had been overrun by COVID. And so they died for other reasons because of COVID. Anyway, so not a great period of time for me, but also not a great period of time for a lot of disabled folks. Like the community is still trying to recover from that. And so it can be quite triggering to hear someone say COVID is over because for a lot of us, it really isn't. So I had my ear to the ground metaphorically on Twitter because I knew there was potentially going to be some ruffling of feathers, but also I really love the song. And so I was just enjoying it. So I was on my regular fan account and I had a couple of different disabled army come to my DMs and say a disabled army is getting attacked because she disagreed with the lyrics to the song and was calling it out a little bit. And I was like, okay. At the time, I did not really want to get involved. Obviously, to some extent, agreed with this person, but also we don't say negative things about BTS lyrics on the timeline if we don't want to get jumped. So this felt like one of those things like maybe we should be having this conversation more privately, whatever. I was mostly just wanted to vibe with the song and not deal with anything at the time. Anyway,
Which is incredibly valid, by the way. The
yeah,
labor to educate such a large group of people about the complexity of the lyric and disabled people's complex feelings about it is a lot on you. And you
it,
are not obligated to do that labor.
yeah, it's a super lot. And I had been on Army Twitter long enough at this point that I knew when a fight was worth fighting and when it wasn't. And this did not feel, especially because it had just released. So we were still in that kind of fervent mass stream 24/7. We were still in that golden comeback period feeling. So I really didn't want to step in and because that was just going to piss people off. Anyway, so I was like, okay, maybe if we just ignore it, it'll go away. That was my bad. That was maybe my mistake right there is just I probably should have done other things. But anyway, that doesn't matter. That is not what happened. Mistakes were made. I learned things from this experience. Anyway, so then I had people back in my DMs saying, okay, now people are using ableist slurs against this person because they're saying this thing about the lyrics. And I was like, all right, maybe I won't speak to the actual event. Maybe I'll just speak to people not being ableist. And I was like, okay, that'll be my compromise here because I feel like that's a fairly, at the time, I thought it was a fairly innocuous thing to say. So I went on the disability account and I basically said, I should also say, I had never seen the original tweet that all these people were talking about. They didn't link it to me. I never saw it. I don't even know what account was being attacked at this point. And so I really literally didn't have any idea what I was stepping into, and I didn't know what was happening. And that was also a mistake on my part. Anyway, so I basically got on my disability account and I was like, hey, I don't really care what the original argument is. Maybe we shouldn't be using ableist slurs to like as an attack. And I was like, let's not be ableist, basically. So then everyone took that as I think some shooter account screenshotted me and that's where it started. But yeah, so basically within an hour, it did not take long. It in fact took incredibly short amount of time, which makes me wonder if I was set up, but that's a whole nother it's a whole nother thing. Anyway, no, so basically the my account got overrun within the hour and yeah, I got canceled big time because apparently I was defending somebody being racist. And that's how people were interpreting that. I didn't even know anything.
Well, I remember now because people were like, "Oh, you're being racist because an Asian person is
Yeah,
trying to say pandemic's over." Like the
right.
Asian
And I
hate
had
pandemic.
not at that point, I had not said anything other than let's not be ableist. I don't care what your original beef was. Let's not be ableist. There was, yeah, the logical leaps because then everybody came and told me I was being racist. And I had no idea where the racism was coming from because I had not seen the original tweet. The racism thing was a leap in logic because people were upset about it, about somebody attacking an Asian artist talking about the pandemic, which, okay, whatever. I can see how people could be upset, and I understand again that this was a really badly timed experience because people were still trying to promote the song. Any negative thing around a song during comeback time is going to get jumped because then people are going to be upset about it. At this point, it was then me making a series of mistakes because I'd never been canceled before. I had no idea what to do about it. I like literally had never had this experience. I'd never had so many, even when I had gone viral, I'd never had so many people in my notifications at once. It was really overwhelming. Again, let me note here that I am also neurodivergent, so it was a very overwhelming experience. And then I think I tried to clarify. I don't know. I did some things. It's all a little fuzzy now, but I think I tried to. I made the kind of classic mistakes of trying to clarify, which dug me into a hole further. And then I deleted the original tweet because I was at that point, I was like, the whole account is being overrun. And this is no longer a safe space. I finally eventually realized I could go private. But at the time, I was really not thinking straight. And I think there weren't a lot of people I didn't have a lot of moots or anyone online at the time, so it was like I was very alone in that moment, and it wasn't until the day after that a lot of people came online and saw what had happened, and then I had a little bit more support, but by then it was too late. Anyway, and then, yeah, so this all kind of stemmed from kind of me trying to do that advocacy work and not really fully realizing the space I was stepping into when I had done it. So I learned a lot from this. It's one of those things where I actually really would like to do research on this at some point. I don't know. I'll have to go look. But like, this is what I would like to ask people because I have a whole physical trauma response when this sort of thing happens. I have it when anything goes viral, positive or negative. Like I get that kind of adrenaline rush, like the fight or flight adrenaline rush. But for this in particular, it was super traumatic because it was a bunch of people in my comments saying really, really choicely awful things. But some of the things in my DMs were also really bad. And even then, I knew at the time to not say anything publicly because it's one of those things where it's, yeah, you're getting death threats, but if you say that out loud, then people just call you a whiner and a victim. Like you're playing the victim by saying, oh, I said a bad thing and now I'm getting death threats. Like you don't say that out loud on the timeline. And so a lot of this stuff, like I just never talked about ever. But yeah, I got not just death threats, but really explicit, like how I should die. Anyway, so all that was in my DMs. And I feel like there should be a moral to the story, but there really isn't. Mostly people are awful.
It just shows how our music community has always been like inflammatory and has tactics embedded in the community to basically disqualify anyone's qualifications.
Yeah.
And there's like tactics to purposely break people down.
Yeah. And there's a couple interesting things that I thought about in retrospect in terms of the community aspects of this. One, at the time, my dear innocent heart, I was convinced that this couldn't be Army that was doing this. This was some other entity. Adorable of me in 2022 or whatever that was. Really adorable. I have since learned, having been canceled several more times, it's definitely Army doing this. So there's that. And also, I think there's an interesting thing about the way, especially the way the community works on Twitter, because we might have intersecting bubbles, but we don't necessarily see everything in everyone's bubbles, right? So I had tweeted this thing, but I had never seen this original person's tweet. I had never seen the original discourse happening around. I just heard that people were like being ableist, and I was like, let's not do that. And obviously, I realize now mistakes were made on my part, but I will say that it was interesting that all of these people assumed I had seen the same things as them, and I was in the same conversation as them. And that's not necessarily true. We could all have seen some tweet, and then some person over here is tweeting about something related, but maybe they haven't seen that original tweet. And so there's like kind of an interesting complexity to the fact that not necessarily everyone is actually having the same conversation, even though it might feel like it. And that goes for because the Army community is so huge. I could be having a similar conversation to somebody in a completely different bubble, not even connected. And somebody could take what I'm saying out of context in their context, and there be a tension there or whatever because we're not actually sharing the same context, even though it might seem like it on the surface level. Anyway, so that I thought that was an interesting thing to think about. And I think that's we've talked about shooters on here before. And I think that's an interesting thing that shooters do particularly well is they gather a bunch of people to them and then they take these out of context tweets or whatever. They take these out of context screenshots and they put them in their space and give them a different context, and so people will get overrun or whatever and not even realize what hit them because they're not even in the same bubble as that shooter or whatever. So that was also an interesting thing to learn.
Yeah, definitely. Like even what Kate is describing when it comes to like shooters. This type of behavior does not only exist on Army Twitter, it exists like in other fandom and other online spaces too. Particularly there's like conversations in fandom around purity culture, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times what happens if someone is trying to like directly go against purity culture, there's a lot of people who subscribe to purity culture that will then take those person's tweets and try to paint them a certain way. It's like very omnipresent. There's a very infamous case of this one person in particular who got brigaded by a bunch of people, and they literally have a whole document outlining like all of the like claims against them and then with evidence against those claims. This is not just an Army problem, it's a larger problem. Once again, Army is not different from the other girls. Army is the same as the other girls, and that is important to recognize because when we don't recognize that, we think all of our problems are secular or are singular, when really this is a larger problem that needs to be addressed with the design of social media platforms and also just how we treat each other as human beings. So
Yeah.
what Kate is going through is very valid, and she is not alone in her feelings. And if you've ever been canceled, listener, you are also not alone in your feelings.
And maybe I want to talk to you because I want to maybe dig into this. Anyway, yes. That was an interesting introduction for me into kind of the space of trying to be an educational, advocacy centered account, and things went awry, shall we say. And a lot of that was deeply centered in ableist ideals. I still technically have the account, but I don't go over there. It took me like 6 months to even open that account back up after that incident. Yeah, I was traumatized. My personal account was quite a bit smaller at the time. I had a small handful of moots that were like really supportive, and I appreciate them. I appreciate you, moots out there. Anyway, but yeah, at the time, I was deeply traumatized. Luckily, it did not affect my love for the song That. I still love that song.
I also love that song, but there is a song that we don't like. And maybe we should talk
Ooh.
about that. You want to talk about 3D with Jack Harlow, Kate?
Yeah, very specifically the feature of Jack Harlow's. That's the bit of the song that we don't like. I actually quite love the alternate version. Just saying.
Jungkook
Uh,
captured 2000s pop so good in that song, by the way.
yeah,
He is
for
just,
real,
oh, he's incredible.
for real. Yeah, so this is the second time I got canceled. Actually, this episode should just have been titled "Kate Gets Canceled Hour." Anyway, no, so the second time I got canceled, I had tweeted again. This will be a pattern, but again, this was during a comeback. And probably if this had been any other comeback or any other type of negative thing I had to say about a song, I probably would have saved it for outside the comeback window. But I didn't because I felt at the time, I basically tweeted if you're feeling triggered by the Jack Harlow version of 3D, there is an alternate version available. Literally all I said. I was basically like, FYI, there is an alternate version if you are feeling triggered right now. That upset people deeply. But anyway, just to give the context, I was feeling super triggered by it. And because I listened to it, I watched the music and listened to it when it aired. And then I was like, I don't think I can actually stream this the way I would normally stream a song because I was feeling deeply triggered and uncomfortable by Jack Harlow's lyrics specifically. And so I just walked away for a little bit, and I was in the DMs and I wasn't really on the timeline because I was like, no, I can't even engage with this song the way I probably would in any other comeback. And then somebody had DM'd me, or maybe it was a moot on the timeline. Anyway, somebody mentioned there was an alternate version on Spotify. So I went and listened to it. I'm like, oh, this is a version without Jack Harlow in it. Okay, I can listen to this one and not feel deeply triggered by the content. So I went ahead and did that. But then I was also like, okay, if I was feeling this way, then for sure other people are going to be feeling this way. So I was like, I have to tweet this out and let people know, because it felt irresponsible to have this knowledge and not share it with other potential people who are being made uncomfortable or triggered by this content. So there we go. And then I got canceled. Yay.
It's gonna be okay. I think when we're talking about this, it's really important to remember that you can interpret a song however you want. A lot of people did a lot of mental gymnastics during that time, saying, oh, like he's not like objectifying women at all. He's like appreciating women. And I'm like, my guys, a song can be interpreted in multiple ways. We are part of a community of people. It's about honoring how people feel, even if you disagree with that. And being able to care for one another. Because here's the thing, when I first listened to it, it didn't really settle with me to have that type of response. But as I listened to it more, it made me go, I'm not down for that. Especially like from my background, like as an Asian woman, like how he said, like ABGs get cute for me. And it's so interesting because he said that in the lyrics. And ABG, it means like Asian baby girl. And it's a stereotype of like young Asian women who like wear makeup in a particular way and who act a particular way. Usually it's like a stereotype based off like Asian women from like the Bay Area. And I thought that was so interesting that he said that in the song, because it's like Asian women are fetishized enough to be mentioned in the song, but not appear in the music video. Because there's not a single Asian woman in the music video at all. It's just a very complex feeling I have about like how as an Asian woman, like I am constantly sexualized and objectified and fetishized by men of all ethnicities and all races, by the way. A lot of times people will talk about like the white man who fetishizes Asian women, but Asian women just in general are fetishized. So I have a very uncomfortable experience being alive. And it's difficult and it's hard. And just like having that in there too, like in addition to what Kate is triggered about, I was very upset about that part of the song too. It's almost like we all have different feelings about music. And also to give some more context around the release of 3D as well. 3D was one of the major releases after 7. And a lot of like people who are funders, streamers, buyers, like people like that, they were really invested in these pre-releases from Jungkook. Because the thought process was like, okay, we got to make seven super duper amazing and do well on charts. We have to make 3D do amazing on charts. And eventually when Golden comes out, then that is when Jungkook will be great, because we did all of this work beforehand. 3D was where there was a lot of CDs going out and the Billboard stuff, and the Billboard changed its rules again. So people were really pushing during 3D to have it be really successful. There was a lot of regret afterwards of supporting 3D when a lot of people had very mixed feelings about it in those spaces. But the truth of the matter is that streamers, funders, buyers, everyone involved in the back end of supporting BTS, they all supported 3D. And that's just a fact that we have to live with, that we all did that, even if later on Jack Harlow got revealed to be a major Zionist. Shocking, I know. Very shocking. And people were comfortable with that. But then even before that, he was problematic in a lot of different aspects. So there was a lot of regret in a lot of spaces about that. So like Kate getting jumped in particular, especially near release day, or it was on release day?
It was literally the same night. Yeah. It was one of those things, if I had any other negative things to say about the song, I would have saved it for not 24 hours from release. But this was like, I have to tell people. It just felt like morally imperative that I let people know that there's an alternate version on Spotify, that they don't have to sit there and listen to a song that's triggering them.
Yes, definitely. First day of when a song releases, if anyone says anything negative about a song, you get jumped, because there are like factors like not even in Kate's control that contributes to why she will get jumped. Because that the first 24 hours to a lot of people is like crucial for a song's success, especially because ARMY is incapable of repeaking things very often, unless there's like a viral push or something like from TikTok or like that. But ARMY always does the highest numbers day one. So that day one is like imperative for a lot of people. So anything that goes against that day one hurts. Like even promoting the alternate version, because on Billboard Hot 100, you can only get one version on the chart placement. So people got really upset about 3D because they're like, you can't promote the alternate version. We have to focus on one version. That's the whole point.
Yeah. And I will say that unlike the first time I got canceled, where I was taken completely by surprise and didn't know what I was doing and had no clue what was going on, this time I knew all this and I still tweeted. I have no regrets.
Living your best life, honestly. I feel like both of us have gotten to the point where getting canceled is this life.
It's like night and day, the two experiences. Well, it's so funny because I was like, people are going to hate this. I am going to get jumped. I knew all this. I still hit send. And the thing is, the thing I think I found most amusing about this particular cancellation is there were a bunch of people in my comments saying horrible things, whatever. I like immediately muted the post. So like people were saying awful things. Good for them. Have fun. And then all the people quote retweeting my very simple, there is an alternate version you can listen to if you're feeling triggered. They quote retweeted that. All the hell, like it was everywhere. Everyone was quote retweeting. I'm like, cool, thanks for getting my message out there for me. Whatever you're saying, that's great. But now how hundreds of thousands of people have now seen my tweet. Thank you. I appreciate you spreading my message.
No, actually, this is such a prime example of what's happening public facing on Army Twitter and what's happening in private. Because in private, people are like, we got to squash this. We got to squash this person who's trying to make people stream the alternate version because it's harming Jungkook's numbers for Billboard Hot 100. But publicly, they can't say that. So publicly, they're like trying to hate on you, trying to call you different names and like that, trying to tell you to KYS and like that.
Yep.
But publicly, that's all happening. But privately, they are doing it for a certain reason.
Yeah.
So if you ever see someone getting unfairly canceled on Army Twitter, there's a private reason why that's happening that people are not going to say publicly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and then now post whatever era we're in the boycott era. We're living our best lives. Post all of that. Now that I've seen my name pop up in a secret Discord chat of people being targeted because they're boycotters, I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm so excited that my name is just being spread throughout these group chats and Discord channels and whatever, man.
Yeah, you truly live in a lot of people's minds rent free, which I find so interesting. We've talked about this before, but I really think it's because you're a white woman and all these white women who are like anti boycotters, they feel betrayed by you, which is why they're so particularly mad at you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's the special brand of me being an academic, and there's like a lot of layers, I think, going on here. And me having been a staunchly supportive Army advocate for several years now, I think that me turning on these larger individual fan group, whatever, I don't even know. I think there's layers of feelings of betrayal and stuff. But anyway, yeah, but for this particular release, like to circle back around, I think that there was an interesting conversation happening with people who were reacting to this tweet, and a lot of folks were upset that I used the word trigger specifically. And so I wanted to circle back around to that in this episode, because I think that there's a lot going on with that word. It has gotten conflated with a bunch of different things in more recent times. I think especially since we've had, at least in the United States, and this has probably trickled out to other parts of the world, but in the United States, we have this whole anti-woke, anti-social justice rhetoric that happens on the internet and other places. And one of the words that community has really latched onto is the word trigger, because for them, it seems to invoke something where it feels like, oh, people are being sensitive. And so if they use the word trigger, basically it's a way to just shut a conversation down, it feels like, for them. Whereas when I use the word, I'm using it very literally, in that lots of folks have had very different lived experiences. Many women of whom are the majority of our fandom, many women, statistically, I could show you numbers maybe someday. I don't know. I'm not going to do it right now. Anyway, statistically, lots and lots of women have experienced various forms of sexual violence against them. And to be triggered means that you are triggering their negative experiences in some way. So they're reliving it, they're having physical reactions to it. It's not something they're choosing to do, right? They're having an actual automatic response to something because it's triggering the trauma they experience. When I'm using that word, I mean it to mean that. That's what, and usually the people who experience that also know this. So this was essentially, this tweet had started as something like a communication from me to my moots, who are majority people who have had certain kinds of experiences in their lives. A lot of them are disabled people, statistically more likely to have experienced sexual violence. This was really just me to my following being like, hey, I see you literally because I'm having these same experiences. Here's a way to enjoy this song without being triggered. And so folks who don't have that experience and don't understand what that feels like and what that means take the word trigger to mean something completely different. And they took it to mean that I was dissing on the song in some way, or that I was trying to sabotage the song in some way, when in reality, that tweet was not for these people. That tweet was literally for the people, the probably somewhat smaller majority of people who literally get triggered by the content. And so having people in there dismissing the word trigger, there was a lot of people who were like, you're misinterpreting the lyrics, things like that. And it's okay. I'm glad that you see the song this way. Go enjoy it. That's fine. This tweet wasn't for you. This tweet was for people who get literally physically triggered by the lyrics. They can't help it. You can't help it. None of us can help this experience. Go away, basically. And so the for me, the larger issue with that is people dismissing that experience and dismissing someone's trigger and dismissing that's extremely harmful. It makes the community unsafe. And I've now seen this multiple times, and woo, in the last 6 months, I've seen it like every day at this point. But like, that's an indicator that I don't care if you are unsafe. I only care that I'm having a good time. And often the people who are being made unsafe in these community experiences because of this are multiply marginalized. They're the people who probably need BTS the most. I have a lot of complicated feelings about that, but that was like the fallout from that. And I know you were having conversations with people too, but it was an interesting kind of reflection for me of, oh, this is it truly, a lot of people don't actually care about making this community safe for other people. They only care about numbers.
Yes, very much. And just to add on to this conversation too, there's like kind of a complexity here with like non-native English speakers and even native English speakers as well. Just like the willful misinterpretation of the word trigger and how the word trigger has become appropriated by like malicious groups of people to like discredit genuine involuntary experiences that people have. And it all combines into this very messy situation. Kate mentioned this, like I talked with a lot of like my moots, because some of my moots are jumping Kate. That's the thing.
Yeah.
When I talk about how Army Twitter is basically like one big like, messed up family and like how we all have like weird ass familial relations, we can talk about that some other time. But like one of my moots in particular, very much like she's a non-native English speaker and interpreted the word with the context that she has as someone who has never encountered the word in a genuine setting. And I explained everything to her too, and I explained everything to her on the TL and then in DMs. We had a whole conversation. And at the end of it, she kept going, let's just agree to disagree. And it's like, no. The problem is that you are purposely misinterpreting this. And then when I am telling you are not accepting that, you are still purposely misinterpreting it. Because the whole issue is that you just don't have the correct context of the word. And you're still holding on to that incorrect context. And even to this day, she still holds on to that. And it's something that is really upsetting to me because love this person. I appreciate that this person is my friend, but also this person is purposely like misinterpreting something that I have very easily explained to them. It's not even the fact that she's a non-native English speaker anymore. It's the fact that she has been educated on it and told the actual definition of word trigger and like how people respond to triggers. And now she is willfully and purposefully misinterpreting me so that way she doesn't have to listen to me.
Yeah.
And that is, I feel like we'll continue to have these conversations around the word trigger. As long as Army Twitter exists, we'll have this conversation around the word trigger. But at the end of the day, the word trigger has a literal meaning and definition that explains how people feel. It's literally used in medical settings, in psychological therapy settings, to explain how people feel and people's reactions to things. So to try to mystify it basically or give context to the word in an improper setting is disingenuous and once again harms the community. You want to know what else is harmful to the community? Telling people not to loop songs.
Oh my gosh. Speak. Yes.
Once again, this whole thing is just like every army is different. Every army comes from different experiences, and we need to acknowledge that and accept that if we're going to be a community. And the way that like looping songs has become completely vilified within the community is a testament of how ingrained streaming culture is in our community. Because neurodivergent people loop songs. It's a stimming thing. People who are neurodivergent loop songs, and that's okay. That's something that's like good for their brain. They enjoy that, and it's engaging for them. And the way that like looping songs has become vilified, by the way, from like a streaming standpoint too, if you loop a song, that doesn't automatically disqualify all of its streams. What happens is that those streams are more likely to get filtered out. It's just like increases the likeliness of it to get filtered out. But if you're also on a Spotify account or like an Apple Music account where you regularly use and you have just like normal listener behavior, most likely the streams will probably be fine and count. What the high filtering rates that Spotify has for songs and even Billboard has are because of how armies en masse, I'll say this, have adopted a lot of streaming methods that do emulate streaming farms. Let's just be real here, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of armies who stream on multiple devices in from one IP address or use multiple accounts and do stuff like that. And very much those are abuses of the system. Even though the system itself is rotten to its core, is inherently racist, inherently xenophobic, inherently trying to disqualify BTS from their system. Okay. But armies themselves don't help that system by using tactics that thus increase the filtering rate and thus make it more difficult and put a lot more pressure on people who engage with the music through looping. And then that directly harms neurodivergent armies who are a minority group within the community.
I'll say that it was like one of those weird things from like day one on Army Twitter. I don't even remember what was my first comeback.
It was 2021 for you when you joined Twitter.
Yeah.
Was it Butter? Or was it like the Japanese releases?
I don't remember. That is so weird. I remember my first comeback before Army Twitter, but I don't remember what my first Army Twitter comeback was. But anyway, doesn't matter. There were a lot of jokes and memes around, oh, I wish I could loop. And there's just a lot of discourse around looping and stuff. And I found it so strange because I am a person who has always looped songs. I drive my whole family crazy looping songs. And so I remember my very first CD was a Cranberries CD. I was 11. And I think I burned holes in that CD. I played it so much. Anyway, so this is decades of me looping songs. And so coming on Army Twitter and have everybody yell at me about, it's just like this kind of constant policing and discourse around like, oh, we don't loop songs. Oh, we don't loop songs. And I was like, that is really weird and feels bad that all of a sudden, like my music listening practices were being vilified. And I don't know. I think that that's one of those things that it's not overtly ableist, but it feels very ableist at the core of it. And it's one of those things where I hadn't even realized until very recently that I had internalized that ableism of, oh, I can't loop songs. I could hear the policing in the back of my head, even though I wasn't hearing it on the timeline because all those people have blocked me now. With the Hope on the Street release, where I was just using MP3s to listen to it, all of a sudden I could loop I Wonder, and I still do. I am stimming on that song so hard. And it just feels so good to not feel guilty about it and to just actually be able to enjoy the music the way I want to. And I am kicking myself that I let other people shape my music experience, especially with BTS, shape that experience for so long. And I want other neurodivergent army to be free of their shackles of ableism.
Actually, free neurodivergent army is like
Yeah.
2024.
Yeah.
I think just like to provide context to this whole, just like the culture streaming on Army Twitter as well. There was a point in time where streaming was crucial for BTS because it made people write articles about them. It helped us like justify, oh, there needs to be concerts for BTS, or BTS needs to be interviewed, or BTS needs to be on the radio because this song is so popular and there's a lot of streams. So a lot of Army Twitter has become so sophisticated now. They have created systems of streaming that are so efficient that it is like crucial for a lot of them to create like these systems of like efficient streaming. And there's like, even this is controversial to say, but there are like streaming group chats, right? So if you join a group chat in particular that is focused on streaming, then you'll be required to send screenshots of your streams every single day. With that, they also have rules within that group chat where if you don't reach a certain amount of streams, you get kicked from the group chat. In a way, it makes that person, when they join the streaming group chat, if they want to be part of the community, and they basically effectively get cut off from the community if they do not do labor. In a way, a lot of these spaces become very predatory because of the engagement with streaming in this type of way. There are ways to do streaming in a way that is actually community based and engages with it in a really fun way. There's like bingo cards, there's like stamp features. There's different strategies that a lot of streaming fan bases have developed to make streaming fun and get rid of a lot of these group chat practices that can create very toxic situations. But inherently, a lot of streaming culture is rooted in the fact that people want efficiency with streaming and they want to maximize the amount of streams possible. And with that, they create a culture where if you do not subscribe to that idea, then effectively you get cut off from the community. And that is how streaming culture effectively destroys our community culture's army.
Yes. And we all witnessed this blowing up in real time during this boycott.
Because
They
for
like,
so long, we allowed streaming to be the thing that united us
yeah.
and not BTS's music.
And it's like with all the more recent reasons I've been canceled, all the things that were the quiet part were suddenly being said out loud. And people just basically being flat out like, yeah, streaming is the most important thing. If you are saying don't stream, then you're being racist and an anti, apparently. And
Yeah.
the number of times people have pulled out the same cards for me for different reasons, it's been real fun. I love it here.
Remember when
Um,
someone called me a white woman on the TL?
yeah,
Yeah. It's not, you can just literally search my account and I talk about being Asian like multiple times.
anyway, but yeah, I think that there's, and I said this, hey, we should maybe think about rethinking prioritizing streaming. I said that this is like an intersectional issue. It hits on things like class, socioeconomic status, it hits on a whole bunch of ableism. There's just so much ableism embedded in our community. And this is, to me, an opportunity to really point that out. Having a great time.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. Pointing out the inherent ableism of these structures and these things that Army has developed is really hard. And that's why we keep getting canceled, team.
It is why we keep getting canceled, yes. It's really been fascinating because I feel like between this podcast and between lots of things I have said over time on my account, there's lots of ways people could come and cancel me for real. But it's been interesting that the things that they keep pointing out are inherently not true. And there's evidence of these things not being true. So it's been half assed in terms of the cancellation. But I will say that, like, I created my fan account with the idea that I would be open about my identity as a professor, and I would be open about the fact that I'm doing research here and that I love my community and I want to show the world the good parts of this community, and also using this account for advocacy and education. And I feel like none of that has changed. I'm still doing those things. It's just interesting shifts over time of when it's okay for me to do that work and when it isn't. And oftentimes, when I'm saying something that doesn't quite align with these kind of core folks and their bases, then that's when things go off the rails. But I'm still here to say that like things like systemic racism and ableism still alive and kicking, and we have an opportunity to reshape things and push them another direction. And so I'll keep doing that.
Yeah, definitely. We have to keep doing that because I very much feel like the army community right now is just torn just because of the fact that there is like the anti-boycott and the pro boycott. I hate that if it's even divulged into like pro and anti-boycott conversations
Hate it
when
so much.
inherently the thing is, if you guys just listened to Palestinian people and did what they asked you to do, we would be having these conversations. Like it's so easy to just like if a Palestinian person is fighting for their own liberation and they asked you, hey, can you please not buy merchandise from Hybe right now because Scooter Braun gets some of the money inherently, and then he donates that money to the IDF and to Israel, and it's a whole process. The money doesn't ever just directly go to BTS, right? So Palestinians are like, hey, he does like not buy merch and not contribute monetarily to like these things under Hybe that Scooter Braun directly benefits from, and then I'm like, yeah, it's easy. I'll do that. You literally are a person of the group of people who is actively doing genocide, and you're asking me to give up something in order to help for the liberation of Palestine. Very easy decision for me to make right there. Extremely easy, right? But for many people, they're doing mental gymnastics to not listen to the Palestinian person. And I'm like, I feel like if you are pro Palestine in any aspect of your life, you listen to the Palestinian person, right? You can disagree with some tactics, right? Sometimes people disagree with tactics, and that's the complexity of every movement, right? There's some Palestinian people who don't care a lot about the boycott and don't care a lot about these different things, but inherently, a Palestinian person has asked you to do this XYZ thing. You should probably do it. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And I feel like things, obviously, things are very tense right now. And for me, thinking about this as a moment for Army to really actually put their words and their mythology into practice. And as a larger community, we're failing at that right now, or proving that the mythology has always just been mythology and not reality. And it's interesting as someone who has experienced really toxic garbage from this community, basically from my very early days in the community, I can say that none of this is super surprising to me, that this is how it all rolled out. And that the folks who are like super pro army, pro, we're such a wonderful community. Here's our like list of achievements and the mythology behind it, and then turning around and basically enabling things like racism and ableism, and enabling things like attacking people because they disagree with you. Like all of this is not good community behavior, and I feel like a lot of this has really just exposed kind of the raw threads of that. And it's to me it's just wild because truly, especially now in what, April 20, the things like what the Palestinian community has asked of us, that it's laid out very simply. They made it easy for people to be like, yes, I can buy into this level of involvement. And the fact that it has become such a divided thing, it's wild to me. But it is interesting that a lot of the folks that have remained moots with me after all of this have been largely disabled folks, have been largely people who were already here for the social justice aspects of Army. And I've gotten a lot of DMs from followers who I'm not necessarily moots with, but they have been following me for a long time. Gotten a lot of DMs from them saying, I don't talk a lot on the timeline, but I really appreciate the advocacy work. So there are people who are still here for this, and we just have a lot of really loud, racist, ableist people out there being loud.
Here's the thing. These racist and ableist people gaining platforms on Army Twitter is so interesting because you think like it'd be counterintuitive to the message of BTS. But with the lens of Army Twitter, it makes so much sense. Because these are the people who put BTS at center point. And all their advocacy and all of anything they believe is with BTS at center point. And because of that, they're not able to comprehend like injustice outside of BTS. Because they put so much emphasis on BTS, people follow them for that because they're like, oh, BTS is center point, of course. But then when it comes to actually fighting for injustice in any capacity, they can't because if BTS is not involved, then technically they aren't involved because their whole lives is just BTS.
And that's wild to me, actually. I actually can't wrap my head around that because I don't live that way. I don't know. It's really depressing.
Yeah, it is really depressing. It's like how I know for a fact, because I've said this before, but if it was like, if any of like the BTS members were revealed to be a Zionist or any K-pop person, just in general, or anyone I liked was revealed to be a Zionist, like I stopped listening to Charlie XCX. And I love Charlie XCS, but she collaborates with Zionists and she makes music with Zionists. And she herself might be a Zionist. I don't know for sure. Her association with them makes me deeply uncomfortable. So I no longer listen to her music in any capacity. And I used to be someone who was a really big fan and I would actively support her music and buy it. There's things that are just more important to me than BTS, which for a lot of people, they hate hearing, which is so interesting because I'm literally a woman of color who has to deal with so much bullshit from the world. And you want me to put BTS above my own morals and who I am as a person? Shocking. Shocking.
Yeah, no, seriously. And it's so weird to me because I feel like, at least at some level, that BTS would hate that too. They literally have messages about loving yourself and centering yourself. I feel like that it's so counterintuitive to the messages that they are giving out. I think that's what I have a hard time wrapping my head around. If you have centered your life around BTS, and then BTS is telling you, no, you need to center your own life and your own ethical morals and whatever. And it's just, I feel like there's a misfire there somewhere. If that message gets lost or that message gets subsumed by this need to just put BTS first. And this is the reason I got canceled because I was like, look, boycotting now, don't stream them now, saves us in the long run so that we can listen to them peacefully later. And yeah, maybe I said that BTS doesn't really need the streams right now. They're in the military. They have millions of dollars. They are fine. Because I've decentered them in that way and said they don't need to be the best right now because other people are more important, like the people undergoing a genocide, for example, more important to center their experiences right now. And that is too much for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's very much just like selective picking and choosing of what they want to center around when it comes to BTS, and then just not listening to everything else about BTS. It's like the people who like love BTS, love Army, and love like this community, but they don't engage with like Korean culture at all. Or like Korean politics. Like Korean politics, there's a reason that people get mad at K-pop idols who read books about feminism. There's a reason it makes the news because Korean politics is so inherent to BTS. Spring Day itself, the song, and how BTS met with the parents of the children who passed during the accident. BTS have always been political bodies. We've talked about this before, political bodies. And people trying to center only specific things about them is so disingenuous and also a little, it feels a little infantile almost of not seeing BTS as like these very complex individuals who come together as a group to create music that itself has very complex themes and cultural background.
I think that was part of this whole thing for me too, is the flattening of them as people and the infantilization and saying, oh, the entire idea that if we don't stream them, they won't know that we're here. That to me is wild because I'm like, are they really in their army barracks checking their stream numbers? I don't think so. I don't think so. Some of them seem to be on Weverse. Go right to them on Weverse. Then they'll know you're here. They don't care about these other things right now. And I think that if anything, they'd appreciate the complexities of the things we're trying to engage in while they're not here. But yeah, I agree. I think there's so much that it's just people are wrapped up in the idea, or they're wrapped up in this, it's almost like fantastical universe where numbers are the only thing that matter and being number one is the only thing that matters. And it's just, look around at the world right now and tell me that is really the only thing that matters right now. And I think you'll find that is not true.
No, that definitely makes sense. And with that, we do have to close out this episode because it has been an hour, but we've talked about a lot. We've gone through a lot. And by the way, guys, when you're listening to this podcast, there might be inklings of things we'll talk about in the future too. Did you want to do any final thoughts, Kate?
Final thoughts, don't be ableist. Work on yourselves. It's okay if you made mistakes in the past. Tomorrow can always be better. If you aren't sure, ask a trusted mood. I don't know. My DMs are open amazingly still. And there's things we didn't even cover in this episode because we didn't even cover the whole ableism around BTS. Anyways, future episode, go us. But anyways, there's so much going on, and there are so many disabled army that you can't even see because they're just accounts on a screen and you don't know what other people are going through. And I think that, I don't know, I feel like, especially right now, it feels like the platform has really flattened people's humanity in a way that is not useful. And anyways, don't be ableist because it's super harmful and makes our lives difficult and sad.
Yes, definitely. I agree with all that. In addition to that, when it comes to talking about ableism, we didn't touch on it, which I'm just like, how did we not touch on it? But also, this is a jam-packed episode already with like how BTS is affected by ableism and how a lot of people really hate it when you like identify with the members at all with neurodivergence. So interesting. I wonder why they hate that. Why is it a bad thing to associate them with that? Unpack that for me, my friends. Unpack that.
That's
But
a
with
future ableism episode. Part 2 is
part
coming.
2, the sequel, even more exciting. We're gonna make people even more mad at us. It's gonna be great. It's okay. People don't listen to this podcast. But besides that, thank you all so much for listening to this episode. Please remember to educate yourselves on ableism, educate yourselves on Palestine, and continue having conversations around these really tough topics. Because ableism is inherent in all of us in a way. We live in a very ableist society.
We do.
Yeah. And it's hard to unlearn things, but unlearning is a process, and you might as well begin now. And with that, we end this podcast episode. Thank you everyone so much for listening. Please take care of yourselves. And that is it. We don't talk about streaming anymore for the closings because we have a very complicated feeling about that right now. But yeah, have a good day. Bye.
Bye.